Use code Datto10 at logi.gg/Datto to save money on your next order from Logitech. Links are in the description. So there's a couple perks I would like to talk about today, and those are Discord and Redirection. Redirection just got a pretty significant buff, so we're going to talk about that one first. Redirection premiered on the Deepstone weapons, where as you shoot weaker targets, you build up charges that are expended on stronger targets in the form of higher damage shots. However, this perk has not been very desirable historically speaking. The charges ran out too quickly, and the damage it dealt wasn't really enough for people to want to use it. And after several years, Bungie has now given this perk a look and realized it was in the game, and gave it a little bit of love. First, the description of the perk is much more clear. Red bars give you charges, and they are consumed on orange and yellow bar targets. Simple as that. Next, the charges do not drain as quickly, and the damage per boosted shot has been significantly increased. I think the reason this perk went under the radar for so long, besides the fact that it just wasn't very good, is because it just wasn't on that many weapons until fairly recently. It would pop up sporadically on random stuff here and there, but it hasn't been until the Final Shape expansion cycle that Bungie has started to spread this perk around. So, what's the goal of this perk? Well, it's to use the weapon normally on junk tier enemies to have very boosted damage on stronger targets while not needing to expend special or heavy ammo to deal with said bigger targets. It sounds good in theory, but how about in practice? I crafted a Posterity from Deepstone, my second 180 RPM hand cannon crafted in the span of a month when I had previously used 0 of them for several years. This is mainly because it's one of 2 craftable primaries with this perk, with only 6 primaries in the game having access to Redirection. The very first place I tested this was in a Grandmaster Nightfall, specifically Hypernet Current. And I was not the most impressed, but I'm not sure if that's really the weapon's fault. Hypernet actually does not have that many orange bar enemies, which is the most ideal target for this perk. Not only that, but this is not a solo activity, which means that orange bar enemies are not really that tough to take down because there's 2 other people there. So the few times that I did get to shoot at an orange bar enemy, of which there were not that many in total across the entire strike, it actually felt like my primary weapon was doing some pretty significant damage to them, where I would be able to kill a target in a reasonable amount of time, although having to use up a good amount of my charges to do so, if not all of them. Using it against a champion, on the other hand, at least a primary weapon anyway, felt like a giant waste of time though. You're not going to be bursting down champions with this perk stacked up to the max or anything like that, not at least in a GM, although maybe Lucky Pants Hunters will have something else to say about that. My issue was that due to the low number of orange bar enemies and the low impact the perk had when we actually found some, is that 99% of the run just felt like I was using a 180 RPM hand cannon with very little going on otherwise. But what this perk is supposed to have going on is that it's kind of meant to feel like a special weapon when the perk is stacked up a lot. The issue there is that I have a special weapon already. I want to use the special weapon on the situational special targets. That's what it's there for. You could totally argue that this could come in handy for the times where you run out of special ammo, and I would be willing to give you that. But those who know their stuff know how to actually balance their ammo usage, so that shouldn't really be a big problem. So this creates a weird dynamic where I want to use this on beefier targets, but I also want to use my special weapon on said beefier targets because that's what they're designed for. We've been conditioned over the years to use our primary weapons for weaker targets, our specials for stronger, and our power weapon for the strongest. Now, this does seem a little at odds with something like my opinion on Quicksilver Storm. QSS was my favorite weapon for a year, and it was also capable of being a jack-of-all-trades type weapon. Very solid single-target primary style damage with the option to do special weapon damage grenade shots. I think the difference here is that the grenades from QSS were very easy to access and were dealing a very high amount of damage to the point where it could almost completely replace your special weapon. Redirection does not feel that strong on a primary. This perk also makes an appearance on a few special weapons, but now on a shotgun for the first time in Unvoiced from Sundered Doctrine. It's also on a glaive from Ghost of the Deeps, but I wouldn't bother with that. I think my issue with redirection on these weapons is that in 99% of the game, the base damage or damage plus perk activated of a special weapon is usually more than enough to cover your bases. In order to build redirection, you need to kill red bar targets with the weapon, and they are still only worth 2 stacks no matter what. However, there's no rule saying that you need to stack it to the maximum. You can kill a couple of red bars and have a big shot stowed away and ready for when you need it. I think that's the more ideal way to play with the perk if you are going to go that route. No backup plan Titans could also see an even greater benefit from the experience if you plan for it. The main drawback, though, is that you will rip through ammo because you are incentivized to use the shotgun on weaker targets, which is something you don't normally want to do, as it's not efficient use of your ammo. I would invest into special ammo generation as a result, like special finisher in your class item. Now, there's only 2 power weapons with redirection available: a sword, Abyssal Edge from this episode, and a machine gun, Corrective Measure, the newest iteration from Vault of Glass. These are 2 weapon types that can be vaguely compared to a primary weapon, at least machine guns can. The goal of these is not necessarily purely boss damage, they can be used for both, but it is more than reasonable to see someone using these kinds of weapons on red bar enemies where you could stack redirection. They also have a lot of ammo at their disposal, so I think redirection makes some amount of sense here as well. I think Corrective Measure could very nicely benefit from such an experience, as it is a weapon that can take on almost any target. So you'll constantly be activating redirection as you switch from red to orange bar, back to red bar, back to orange bar. It's always going to be active. Ultimately, I think redirection is a now interesting perk, but at the moment, it doesn't feel like a perk that is going to dramatically change your day-to-day if you choose to bring it. It can probably offer some cool moments here and there. Sword users might have some fun bursting down bigger targets. It's at least a perk that is usable now, but I think it's still going to remain some kind of a niche option. Speaking of perks that are trying to let you do multiple things, Discord. Discord is where final blows with another weapon gives you blah, 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 who cares? But also, when you get a final blow while Discord is active, the ammo used for that kill is refunded. So, you get a kill with a primary weapon or something, you swap to your Discord weapon, and you go around trying to kill as much stuff as possible for free. Up until recently, this perk was only on snipers and shotguns, but is now available on the Episode 3 Fusion Rifle, Afterlight, the Glaive, Refusal to Call, and the first power weapon to receive it, Eyes Unveiled, the Episode 3 Linear Fusion. I haven't really heard about Discord getting much use, but now that it has spread to some other weapons, now that it's on a power weapon, and now that you can get both Discord and Harmony on select weapons, I wanted to talk about it a bit more. Although more specifically on Eyes Unveiled. We'll talk special weapons a little bit later. Since the beginning of time, or this franchise, and especially now with our characters being so strong in the majority of the game's activities, you've typically wanted one of your 3 weapons to be some sort of a boss-killing weapon. We are very good at clearing out trash mobs, but we are not very good at killing bosses, at least most of the time. So having a boss damage weapon is pretty important. Eyes Unveiled is not really a linear fusion that I'm looking to have in my inventory for any kind of boss damage reasons, because it can only get some of the weaker perks that are good for sustained damage. It can get Triple Tap and Frenzy, but you can find much better options on other linears, although this is a good starter linear. Every other perk is more designed around ad slaying. It's an ad slaying linear fusion, which feels kind of like an oxymoron. I think the main thing being attempted here is seeing how the community responds to such a perk being available on a power weapon, a perk that potentially allows for a bunch of free shots to be fired. But this too is somewhat at odds with the special ammo slot. I want to use my special weapon for these mid-tier enemies, not waste, quote-unquote, precious linear fusion shots. And even if I do kill the target and I get my free ammo back, it's still ultimately going to leave me with a power weapon that is less efficient at killing the targets I really want it to kill, which are bosses, or maybe like champions or something like that. I tried this weapon out in a GM Nightfall to really test it out, and it worked pretty much exactly as I expected it to work. I would kill something with another weapon, I would switch to this, and try to knock out as many targets as I could within the time limit that I had. And it was okay. It was fine. It was satisfying to be able to one-shot some red bar enemies here and there, like vandals, like mid-tier red bars, instead of plinking away with a hand cannon trying to knock them all out. But I did have to pay a lot more attention to my gameplay as a result, constantly watching the timer or counting in my head, which is not really as fun. And for all the times where I got to pop 3 or 4 enemies for free, there were the times where I ended up wasting a bunch of linear shots because maybe I missed, or they didn't die in that one hit, or I'm fighting an enemy that won't die in a single shot, or something like that. The good felt like it was evened out by the not so good. This GM is also a bit more intense than some others, where standing still and analyzing your shots and your targets is not nearly as easy to do in some other GMs, so there were many times where I was just tossing out shots into nothing. I did also have a surge active, so without that surge, who knows what my performance was really going to be like. And then, when we got to the boss, who was a pretty healthy boss, as you can imagine, my damage wasn't as good as it could have been, although it is tough to use a linear in this GM in particular. Obviously, this is not that serious of a conundrum. There are plenty of activities where you can get away without using a weapon that is solely designed for killing bosses, or where your power weapon doesn't need to be a DPS monster. And I do think it is a neat concept for Bungie to play around with on power weapons, to try to incentivize using power weapons outside of normal power weapon times, to just have a bit more fun during gameplay, to not feel like you need to hoard all of your ammo for a specific moment in time, which is cool. I just don't know if many people are going to buy into it just yet for anything serious, or if it even needs to be serious. The Harmony perk works in a similar way, where kills with another weapon give you a 20% damage bonus when you swap to the weapon with Harmony, and only for that weapon. The dream there is Discord for free kills, and Harmony for that damage bonus to help you make those happen. Only issue is that right now this perk combo is only on 3 shotguns and 1 sniper, so it's just not very widely available. But I do think Discord just feels better on a special weapon right now because 1, it leaves your power weapon alone, but mainly 2, the muscle memory just feels a bit better. It doesn't feel as weird of an experience to take out a shotgun to go shoot something that's a little bit tankier, because that's what a special weapon's designed to do, versus taking out like a linear fusion to pop an orange bar in the head or something. And in trying out my Sojourner's Tale with Discord and Harmony, that holds up. It allows you to use your special weapon more freely instead of feeling like you need to either hold it for specific use cases or feel like you're wasting your ammo. Again, like we just talked about with the power weapon. And again, no backup plan Titans. It's probably something in there for you to take advantage of as well. It also does technically work with sniping, but sniping is a bit more of a precision experience compared to shotgunning, which can make it feel not as fun to maybe do. If Bungie ever does expand the offering of Discord to other power weapons, you'd be looking at grenade launchers and rockets, which I think does open up the window a bit more for this perk. Being able to fire off a bunch of free rockets is pretty enticing. I mean, like, look at the buff that they gave to Eyes of Tomorrow a while back, where if you kill, 4 targets, you get refunded and your next shot is boosted. People still don't use Eyes of Tomorrow, but I get the feeling that if that requirement was reduced to 1 target via Discord, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of people spamming some free rockets. That might be a little much, so we'll see if Bungie drifts in that direction at all. Same kind of goes for GLs, which is somewhat similar. That's all I got, yeah. Just some conversation on some pretty niche perks. I don't know where I was really going with this. It was just something that I wanted to discuss, because I think it's a neat concept for Bungie to try out some of these ideas, and I don't know how many other people have really discussed it or like even noticed it at all, so yeah. Redirection, and Discord. That's a video. And it's over. So that's all right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.